Hi there! As promised in the thumbnail, today we are going to get into this new Makeup by Mario eyeshadow palette. This is the Eternal Eyes Moonlight palette. We are going to do some swatches and then we're going to compare some other palettes to see if you already have this in your collection. So let's get right into it. Let's take a look at this palette. This is what she looks like. There are 12 shades in this eyeshadow palette. This is the second palette that he has done in this particular format. So we have 4 shimmer shades right here. Right here. And there are no specific names, just EM1 through EM12. We have some lighter mattes, some mid-tone mattes, and then some deep mattes. This looks kind of like a satin color to me. This is how I got my eye look today. I decided to use these 2 shades in my crease. I packed the navy all over my lid, and except for the inner corner, I used this icy blue shade. From here out, you can see a little bit of a gradient here where I don't have the navy, and then out, and then I use this black as a liner along my lash line. I wanted to play with the blue today, so we'll do some other looks with this at other times, but let's get right into the swatches. So the swatch that we have right here is an off-white bone color. So this is not going to show up really well probably, but we'll put it right there. The next shade is this icy color right here with a hint of blue, a little iridescence. It looks like a snowflake in a rainbow. It is very shimmery and shiny, and because it's a little bit translucent, you could put this over one of the deeper shades to really bring out the sparkle. You could do a gradient look like I did today and stop the dark blue right about here and then have lighter to darker. I think this is a really versatile shade. The third shade we have is this taupey color right here. This color is going to be a bit of a chameleon depending on your skin tone, I believe. I have a cool skin tone, so on me it is a brown taupey color. I've watched several other reviews of this palette, and this truly is a chameleon color. It's going to come off pretty much gray if you have a warm skin tone, but it'll be a little bit warmer if you have a cool skin tone. The last color in this row is this gray color right here. This is a satin color. Pretty dark. I hope you can see that little bit of shimmer in there. So that's the first row swatched right there. Okay, let's go to the second row now. We have a little bit more of a brown color here, a little less rose than this one. So this is going to be a little bit warmer on me. So you can see the difference. There is definitely a difference here. Now we're going to get into a shimmer color. This is a little bit more of a brown shimmer. It has a little bit more of an opaque base than the one above it. You can see the beautiful sparkles in this one. Next, let's go to this shimmer right here. This is more of a pewtery gun metal shimmer in the pan. It actually has some gold reflex and has a little bit more of a bronzy tone on my skin. The last color in this row is this mid-tone gray color. This is a matte. You can see it's a little bit lighter actually than this satin shade, a little less blue also than this satin shade. I'm trying to clean my fingers off, I'm trying to multitask. Let's look at our last row now. So we're going to start with this deep, dark, cool tone chocolate brown here. These mats are swatching really nice. They feel very soft in the pan. And then we have our last shimmer, which is, to me, a mix of these two shimmers, kind of. Yeah, looks like if these two had a baby, it would be this one. But I hope you can see the reflective sparkle in here. I could just stare at that all day. The navy blue is what a lot of people were very interested in. Look how pigmented that is. That wasn't a very good swatch on my part. And I only needed such a light amount to get the blue all over the lid. I didn't have to go back in. This is a black shade. Again, really pigmented. This is the whole palette swatched out. And I'll keep this on this hand because there may be a few that I actually want to physically compare. I'm just going to build this lightest shade up just a little bit more since it looks pretty much like my skin tone. There you go. Isn't that beautiful? All right, so those are the swatches of the brand new Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes Moonlight palette. So the first logical palette to compare it to would be the former Ethereal Eyes palette. This was just the original Ethereal Eyes. So here it is on its own. Here it is. I'm going to have to get this down. Here they are compared to each other. This is definitely the warm tone sister of this palette. Overall warm toned. Looking at these, I only see one color, and it's a rosy taupe color. And I'll swatch it right here and comparing it to this rosy taupe color. Very, very similar, isn't it? All right, so again, this is the original Ethereal Eyes palette, and this is the new Moonlight palette. Let's go ahead and compare to his other palettes as well. Logically, we're going to go to the Neutrals palette. This is an all matte palette. Here it is by itself. Now, let's add our new Ethereal Eyes. When I saw these together, I thought, what a great companion palette these two would be if you just wanted to grab a few extra mattes for variety. I'm not going to swatch a whole bunch of mattes. There are some similarities. The black, the dark gray, and again these rosy colors like this one right here. They're similar to each other, but this is kind of like the matte version of this in a way. As far as Makeup by Mario, the last palette that we're going to compare to is the original Master Mattes. This is the warmer version. This is the very first in this series that he launched. So let's compare these. Much warmer. Again, you do have a cool tone dark brown and a black in this one. Other than that, the bone colors are a little similar, but nothing too similar. So those are the comparisons to the actual Makeup by Mario palettes. The only drugstore palette that I could find that was cool tone like this was an e.l.f. palette. This is the Truffles palette. These are $3 palettes by e.l.f. I thought I was going to have some more affordable eyeshadows, but not in cool tones, I don't. So here we go. We have the black, the chocolate, and we have a taupey shimmer. The lighter brown is really warmer than these other ones. Just for funsies, let's swatch the taupey shimmer in the e.l.f. palette. We'll swatch it right here, and you can see just the dramatic difference there. I think that the shimmer is really pretty actually in the e.l.f. palette for just a more subtle day. Next palette that came to my mind, from now on these are indie palettes and high-end or luxury palettes, and immediately I thought of the Cool Cashmere palette from Dior. So here they are next to each other, and I see a lot of similarities in tone here. I do not see anything that I think is really close enough to swatch. But this does give you a similar vibe. So if you're not into the navy blue really, and you have this palette, you have the general vibe of the Makeup by Mario palette. I have the original Sultry and the smaller version of the Sultry palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills. This is the smaller condensed version that was released last year compared to. So this icy shade in the center, I'd like to swatch that one. This has a black, it has a dark brown, and it does have a gray color, but let's swatch this shimmery one here in the center of ABH, and let's take a look. In my opinion, the ABH is a little more metallic. It has a lot of opacity. It's very pretty in its own right. It just doesn't have the individual flecks and sparkles that the Mario palette has. So that's the redone Sultry palette. The original Sultry palette, let me take the brush out. This one's awfully beat up, guys. I thought of this one. You've got some of the bone colored shades, the black, the gray, the dark brown, some taupes. Again, you've got that icy shade that I've already swatched. So similar vibes if you have the Sultry palette. I pulled a couple of Nabla palettes out. These are the Cutie palettes first. This one is Platinum. I pulled these without comparing them first. So I'm comparing these as you are. So some of them might be pretty spot on. Some of them might not be as similar. I think that the Nabla palette is a little bit warmer of a vibe. But again, I want to swatch the shimmers. First of all, this really light shimmer. And And then this more gunmetal taupey shimmer. So I swatched these two. Now let's take a look. So again, these are more metallic. They are still beautiful. Nabla does a great job. Remember, this is our ABH, so these are the Nablas. So this is similar to this, but this has no blue reflect to it. And then this one is similar to this one. These are just really pretty shades by Nabla. And the mattes are a little warmer, but I think overall, I think it was a pretty good comparison palette to try. The next Nabla palette is the Midnight palette. And this, I wanted to try to find some blues. So this is the closest that I could find as far as the blues goes. And again, if you wanted a more blue look and you needed to pull a lighter blue to blend or something like that, I think this would make a nice companion palette. And the last Nabla palette that I have is the Side by Side palette. This does definitely have some more warmness to it. This bottom row in particular, and some of this other row really kind of gave me some similar vibes. So let's put these together. We've got a bone shade that's similar. The chocolate brown is similar. The grays are a little bit lighter, so if you wanted a gray look and you need to pull in some more light grays, again, nice companion palette. Just gave me a few vibes. Let's look at some Pat McGrath. This is a quint, I believe, from last winter. And these shimmers with the dark gray really kind of made me feel the general vibes of this palette. So let's swatch some of these Pat McGrath shimmers. I'll swatch all 4 of them for you. Right away, I'm getting overall again a more metallic kind of vibe. But you have a very dark gray and some very similar tones of shimmers. So I'm trying to figure out which Pat McGrath one this is. Celestial Nirvana from last year. So if you have one of these, you certainly have a similar vibe, that's for sure. And there were 2 motherships that kind of gave me Moonlight vibes. The first one is this Subliminal? Yes, the very first palette. In many opinions, the best palette that she ever did. So this is the Pat McGrath Mothership, the very first one. And other than the blue here, definitely you can see some of the cool taupey kind of vibes from this palette. Yeah, definitely I feel like some similarities here. This is not related to this video, but that special shade is one of the favorite special shades in my collection. The next Pat McGrath Mothership that I have is the 10th one, Moonlit Seduction. Let's see how this stacks up. I think this is going to be a little bit warmer, personally. I keep closing this Mario palette and now I'm trying to open it with one hand. dark brown is similar. Some of the, smaller shimmers, I'm going to check this shimmer on the end here and compare it. I'm going to kind of liven up this shimmer and the Mario. Okay. Yeah, you're getting some really similar vibes there. See this one? I still have some under here I couldn't get off. But again, that shimmer in particular and the dark shade, I think those really kind of reminded me a little bit of the Mario palette. Also last year for the winter season, Tarte released some eyeshadow palettes. They released a set, and when I was thinking of navy blues, this is what came to mind. They also have some cooler colors here, but it was the blues that I specifically wanted to take a look at here. And again, I think as a companion palette, if you were really wanting to go for a big time blue look, I'll swatch 3 of these shades for you. You're seeing a lot more sparkle in some of these because I wasn't able to totally get the Pat McGrath. But here's the navy in the Mario palette. It does look similar to this navy over here. And I do feel like these would be good companions for each other. So if you're going for more of a blue look and you did get those Tarte palettes last year, that you may want to get those back out. Play with them with some of the mattes there, and you could probably get a similar vibe to the Makeup by Mario. I also thought of the Naked One palette. Let me get the brush out of here. This palette has a much cooler vibe to it, but I think it's actually a little warmer than the Mario. Of course, I thought of these colors here on the end. So let's take a little look. Yeah, I think you got a really similar vibe with the Naked One palette. Definitely a similar vibe. I don't see any exact dupes as far as shimmers to swatch, but I just wanted you to be able to see what could possibly be in your collection. Next, I have the Sigma. I keep forgetting to take the brush out. I'm so sorry. This is the Cool Neutrals palette. And looking at it now, I don't think it's going to be as similar as I thought when I first pulled it. Over here on this end, you have some deeper shades that definitely, I guess, made me think of it. So this whole side of the palette right here, I guess you're getting some similarities. There is one shimmer that I want to, let's do 2 of them. All right. These shimmers from Sigma are beautiful, but they don't have that PC sparkly reflect that Mario has in his palette. But that one side of the palette, I believe that that's very similar. So if you have that one, I have 2 palettes from Natasha Denona. First, I thought of the Glam palette. This is a pretty generally cool palette. Next to Mario. Definitely some similarities here. There's no blues in here, but you've got that grayish brown vibe going on. Let me just swatch a couple of the shimmers here. These palettes from Natasha Denona were more classic, kind of elegant shimmers. They look beautiful on the eyes. Again, they're not as piecey as far as glitter goes as the Makeup by Mario palette is. The next Natasha Denona palette that I thought of was the Xenon palette. This is super cool. You've got blacks, grays, and some navy hinting colors. So this palette makes this palette look warm. But there still are just a couple that I would like to swatch. There are two that are navy leaning. So here is our navy shade in the Mario palette. This one right here is the closest match to that one. And I want to definitely swatch some of the shimmers because they are giving me the vibes for sure. So I am going to swatch Stellar and Supersonic. Yeah, that has a hint of blue. And then Neve. And I think that's all we're going to do as far as the shimmer goes. So you can see these newer Natasha shimmers are a little more reflective, similar to the Mario vibes. And this one and this one are definitely giving me similar vibes on the hand. Definitely a little bit of a blue shift to them. Those are the Natasha Denona palettes that came to my mind. So this is so much cooler than the Mario palette, but I just mainly wanted to give you some blue comparisons to go with. Let's look at some Huda Beauty palettes now. The first one is Pretty Grunge. This is definitely a cool tone vibe. You've got black, dark brown, these rosy taupey browns, and some very reflective shimmers in this palette. So why don't we swatch the reflective shimmers and compare those to the Mario palette. Yeah. In my opinion, again, this looks really chrome, metallic, whereas these look more sparkly, piecey, glittery. But definitely similar vibes. So if you're not so much into the gray and the blue, but you like the black and the cool tone brown and the taupey shades with some nice sparkles, I do believe that you would enjoy using the Grunge palette. This shimmer never wants to come off my hand when I swatch it. This one from Huda is just really, really a strong shimmer. Did I compare these next to each other? I can't remember. Just to be safe, I'll do it. There. If I did it twice, I'll try to edit it out. I'm sorry. So there they are next to each other. One other Huda palette to go, and then a couple of indie brands. So the Rose Quartz palette, definitely when I was pulling palettes, it gave me the vibes. Let's see if I was even close. Okay, so these dark colors and these rosy taupey colors definitely are giving me some cool tone vibes. I don't see any shimmers really to swatch in this palette that are similar. I think it was the mattes that were kind of reminding me of this beautiful rosy brown right up here. So that's the Huda Beauty Rose Quartz. Now, 3 indie palettes. And my definition of an indie palette is an independently owned company that you can't find really in Sephora, Ulta, any of those places. There are some indie companies that are in Sephora, Ulta, but I try to keep Sephora and Ulta together, and then places that really aren't in any of those. This is the Bougie Boudoir palette. And again, some of the more rosy tone mauves and the dark, and then some of these shimmers gave me the vibes. This definitely has more warmth to it and a little more pink than this one. But let me go ahead and swatch some of these shimmers. If you have never taken a look at anything from Kaima Cosmetics, they're over in the UK, I believe. And I have a couple of their palettes now. The quality is just mind-blowing. It is so beautiful. Indie palettes are definitely, I mean, look at those shimmers. Indie quality shimmers, multi-chromes, all of those. There's just nothing like them. So these are some that I thought were similar, that kind of gave me a similar vibe to the Makeup by Mario palette. My little cloth has so many eyeshadows on it. Look at this. These just don't want to come off of my hand. That is just crazy. I have glitter and sparkle all over my hand now. So Bella Beauty Bar has one, doesn't have all the vibes. Let me just see how close or far apart I was. But this is the Poison Garden palette, and particularly this and this and this was giving me Mario vibes. And I definitely think the rosy brown, this is more of a teal than a navy. And there were a couple of shimmers also that I wanted to compare. The top 2 rows, definitely not similar, but it was that bottom part. So I thought, for all of my girlies who love indie makeup, let's see what Bella Beauty Bar has that could give us the vibes. Oh my goodness. I just want you to look at those first before I even put the other. Look at this indie brand. Oh my goodness, they're just amazing. So yeah, we've got some kind of blue toned shimmers, kind of that goldeny, sparkly color. Definitely some similar vibes, plus the dark brown, the black, the taupe, and the rosy taupe. Definitely those could give you a similar vibe to the Makeup by Mario palette. The last one here is an Inslee Rain palette, and now that I've just been looking at all of these for so long, I don't think this is gonna be as similar as I thought at first. So here she is. She is a cool toned dream. I was thinking this dark brown, the gray, the rosy taupey shades, and then a couple of the shimmers. So let's hold them up together. So if you just isolate the ones that I mentioned, yeah, you could get a similar vibe. This is the Cold Moon palette by Inslee Rain. And let's swatch. Oh my goodness. I want to swatch them all for you. However, I have to try to stay on task here. So I'm only going to swatch the ones that kind of give me the vibes. Oh man, I want to swatch them all for you, but let's just stay with these two. Again, look at these, they're crazy. Whoa, almost fell. Again, compared to these shimmers. So those are my comparisons of the Makeup by Mario palette. I'm super glad that I got this palette. I know I'm going to get a lot of use. I love cool tone colors, and I gravitate more towards super sparkly, impactful shadows, especially my shimmers. Look at all this glitter I still have on my hand. That won't come off for a couple of days. So again, here is our palette swatched out. I hope this was helpful, and I will probably be posting some other looks with this palette over the days and weeks to come. And in case anybody is still with me, I just wanted to real quickly show you the blush I have on is Ravi Beauty. This is in the shade Oasis. Really impactful shimmer, just one little dot. And I also got my new Ravi Beauty lipsticks in. This is the lightest one. This is what I have on. So if you're into that 90s kind of concealer lip kind of vibe, but you don't want to be quite that dramatic, but you want that kind of outlined 90s lip with the pale lipstick, I think that you get a really nice vibe without it kind of being overdone. So I'm going to post a video with all of my Ravi lipsticks and blushes and swatches and all of that too. I also have the new Natasha Denona palette coming in, I think Wednesday, and I have a few to compare as far as that goes. Y'all let me know if you like this format with me sitting here and, you know, going over things like this, or if you think it would be better if I did an overhead view sitting at a table. Let me know how you think you can get the best swatches. I just feel like I can really move my hands around and kind of show you the different reflex this way, but you guys are the boss, so let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend.